All right, so this is about classroom observations, and I am so delighted that Leslie Kneisel is able to join us because she's part of the math program at Champaign Unit 4. And thank you all for coming to this, the first Friday lunch for MSTE for this semester. All right, so we have this classroom observation tool, and before I get started, I'll show you how this works. It is something that was developed in kind of rapid prototype at my request by Abigail Sneer, who is somewhere. There she is. And so I kept sending her changes, and she heroically programmed them in eToys, the tool that we're using to teach children programming at schools in Unit 4. Here's how it works. We go into a classroom. We'll drag out a desk. We can draw that desk and turn it and put students. There are two colors for students for the different genders. I tend to make yellow, female, purple, male. And when you click on the desk or table, it gives it a letter. And when you click on the genders, they increment in odd and even, depending on which gender is represented by which color, and we just choose. Like I said, the yellow I tend to make female just for my purposes. And then this is an adult, the teacher. And when you click on that, a timestamp comes up, and you can type. And when you hit the pipe, it goes away. And then if you bring out another one to indicate the teacher is here and click on it, it increments, and another note can be made. For as long as I want to type. And then when I hit the pipe, it goes away, and when I click on it, I can see the note again. And then other tools that Abigail has put in for me, I can show the notes log, and I can hide the notes log. So when I'm done, I show the notes, copy everything, put it into a Word document, and I've got a timestamped list of my observations. So that's the tool that I used for this process. And like I say, it's a prototype, but we've been testing it out. Martha Mikowski there is also with me on some recent observations. OK, so here is a math class that I observed. So these yellow dots are female students. The purple are male students at tables. The numbers, and you can kind of connect the dots, show you the location of the teacher at a particular time. These particular notes, which are also incremented within those, are me, because I'm sitting at this table. But I wanted a special place for things where I'm just thinking or where I'm just looking out. And then didn't use it during this class, but this is for another adult, a teacher's aide or someone else. I want to be able to differentiate the adults in the room so that I can see where the teacher is moving, where the teacher's aide is. But my notes are going to be incremented 1, 2, 3, 4, regardless. So the very first note was mine. The second was a note about when a teacher was in position 2. I have it highlighted right there. He was standing right there by students when I took the second one. So here's, and Leslie can correct me, here's the motivation for a recent classroom visit. Teachers were very concerned about the college preparatory math curriculum. It's been new in the Champaign district for the last 2 years. It is an older program, 20 years with that much research and time. It wasn't one of the NSF-funded programs, which has both advantages and disadvantages, but it is based on a group learning paradigm. And parents, in a recent parent meeting, were reporting that kids are forced to work in groups, that they have to learn on their own, and they can't get help, and they aren't getting help. I should say they can't. They can certainly work with group members, but they aren't getting help from their group members, and so they're stuck. They're told to look at YouTube for instruction. And
that's false information.
Yeah, there's so and I mean there were other complaints. Like, what were some of the other ones actually?
That the teacher wasn't teaching.
The teacher wasn't teaching.
The perception is
Yeah.
that the teacher doesn't teach. Right now, the teacher's not teaching.
So I went in to observe a classroom that I knew or thought was one of the ones that they were complaining about. Hopefully I've maintained enough anonymity here that we don't know who exactly that teacher is. But one of the advantages of the tool, I think, is it can show what happens in the class without being a video. You know, so with sufficient, and that's actually one of the things I'd like your feedback on. Is it sufficient to render a good picture of what took place in the classroom while still maintaining some confidentiality with regard to who the particular teacher might be? And it might be the case that it's just best for clinical kinds of work within lesson study kinds of environment. So this is a classroom layout. Again, the table where I was sitting, the teacher desk. This is a podium, a smartboard, a door, basically. So we arrive at 9:20, and the way that I'm going to annotate this is with text along the side. Teacher quotes will be T and then a colon for what the teacher's saying. And for my notes, the observer notes, I put them in parentheses. And then the number indicates where the location of the teacher is, or in my case, for me, the observer. So it took me 8 minutes to get that going. And by the time I got the layout going, I pulled over one of those dots here. The first one was me saying, I'm setting up now, this is the layout. And the teacher was here at this time saying, you got it. And he's passing back papers. T says to one of the students, good job. And so he's moving from 2 to 3. He's passing back a paper, goes to 4, looks at this group, says, good job. Goes to 5, comes all the way, let's see, where's 5? Oh, I think I crossed it off there. Over here and says, normally I would use a pencil for sure. Students ask for advice on something, teacher gives it. And then teacher's returning papers again over here. And then the next 5 minutes, T notices something and says, let's share something with the whole class. Let me share with you the definition of domain and range. How about we take a look at an example? How many x values make up this graph? And he's pointing, so he's gone up to the smartboard, he's pointing to something on the smartboard. Class, I need everyone's attention for the moment. So group discussion quiet. Normally groups are talking within each other, so he's going to do whole class instruction. He needs to let them know that this is taking place. That he wants their attention. And he gets it. This arrow means it's going forever in the left direction. And this arrow means it's going in the, it tails off and I couldn't follow it. He's writing on the whiteboard. Coordinate notation is the best to use. Where does it go up, class? Will it be a parenthesis or a bracket? A bracket, correct. So someone has answered. Class, any questions on domain and range? Okay, you guys are off to the races. So that is the text I captured in about 5 minutes of observation with his looking, the teacher looking and gathering information from looks. And it was pretty direct instruction on domain and range. He had some examples there on the board. Okay. Next, he's still over on the whiteboard. This quiz, I think he was saying quiz, it might have been homework, really reflected the work you must do. You must help your teammate. I want to see process. If we are learning, that is the key. And he's reading from sheets that are above the whiteboard. And these were a little hard for me to see. Sheets that had classroom rules or goals for the classroom that were being read. And T says, I've been a little flexible, but we're going to start tightening up. So he's clearly acquiring some familiarity with the CPM process. So on 9, 10, and 11, what we're looking at are interactions. So they're my notes here, and teacher is here. And I'm observing students at this time. So H23 or H19, H23 and H21 are gossiping, while H19 and H17 are working. It's easy for me to see from here and to note, and so it catches my eye. F14 and F13 working diligently up here. They're talking, but it's on task. F13 is saying, I don't know, it's not linear. 2 points. They go up. Yeah, it's closer. G10 has his hand up over here. T recognizes him and goes over. That's 12. So after I'd taken those notes, the teacher goes over here. And G10 reads the problem. T, yes, excellent, excellent. Yeah, you got it. Now, what part am I going to erase? What's the domain? This is a dialogue between the two, but I can't catch the student. G10 answers. T, yes, you got it now. So it's less than. There you go. 2 is to the right there. T is working with G10, answering questions and posing questions. T, yeah, you got it. And I noticed that G8 is observing their interaction. So the next 3 numbers. T is passing back quizzes or papers of some kind. I think it was quiz. H21, H23 are now on task. So they got their gossiping out of the way or whatever it was they were talking about and got back on task. H17 is helping now. So they're getting help from a neighbor. H17 says, after 8 hours, H23, by 1 o'clock, oh yeah, T comes to this group. They have a question. He confirms their thinking. OK. Now, 16 through 19, what we're looking at here is I had a note that G25 has raised her hand. T's answering a question from J3, and J1 are both looking at their paper as T explains. G25 keeps her hand up. So the teacher had been over here, and when the student here had their hand up for a while. T, class, I notice a lot of you are using pens. I would not recommend that at all. T then comes over to table G to answer the question. T returns to the front of the room. Class, I want to define an asymptote for you. Class, I need everyone's attention. Again, you know, the conversations, he's got to get attention, so he calls for it and gets it. OK, and this continued with him at the front. So the teacher writes, and this is about a 4-minute interaction, writes 7 equals 1 over x on the whiteboard. What value is excluded if I were to graph this? I would set up an xy table. At 0, we would be what? Undefined. Notice when we graph this class, I'll get -2. These things are coming in right here. By the way, I'm not actually paying attention to the content. I'm just recording what I'm hearing. So whether or not this is actually mathematically what's happening mathematically, I probably would need another observer to pay attention to the math as I'm trying to just capture some language. These things are coming in right here, pointing at the graph. In fact, they are horizontal asymptotes. I have an infinite amount of space here, pointing at the area between the graph and the axis. Many of you are looking right here, and he draws a circle around the axis. Be real careful, because I only want x values that are less than 2. What am I going to do at -1 class? The student answers. Yes, excellent. So again, asymptote is a line that is approached but never touched. 21, then the teacher comes over here, and he's looking at the work of K31, who asks questions and shows something to the teacher. K2 is observing, and the teacher says, very good. OK, T49, so he's 6 minutes. 22, the teacher is here at table L. And he's looking at the work of L37. He's asking questions. All 3 students at L are attending to T's explanation. Students around the class begin to get restless. The end of the class is approaching clearly. So you all know when kids watch the clock, and So we didn't know when the end of the period was coming, but the kids tell you because they start to pack and organize. 23, so teacher goes back to the front of the class. Let's do a little housekeeping and make sure our calculators are in. Have a seat, please. Class, I would like to go to the CPM website, and I would like you to go to the CPM website and navigate to the homework help. And then he goes over to the podium where I think a computer is. Class, let's work a little on our closure. We definitely need to work on our speed. Class, let's go ahead and take a look. Class, we should quickly be able to graph these, very quickly. At 9:55, though, the bell rings. Done, you know. So the kids then get up. 9:55, he says, have a great day, class. Have a great day. I will be here after school. Come and see me. After class, students come to ask questions. This is the teacher desk over here, so some students come to it. One asked to come after lunch, but he says he needs to recharge. That's his time to recharge his batteries. He's there after school. So this is a brief observation, just a half hour that we were there. And my question to parents would be, and my question to you in advance, though, because I need your help in kind of thinking about this tool, thinking about the observations, and what might be effective ways to talk. Here's what I saw, what I believe I saw. I saw a teacher engaging in direct instruction, actually probably more than CPM, than the veteran CPM teachers tend to do. We stayed and watched a class taught that had been, where the students and the teacher had been with CPM for a couple of years. And that teacher answered questions with questions almost every time. You know, it was very, from the point of view of those who would want direct instruction, you wouldn't find it very frustrating. But the kids were well adjusted to it. But we definitely saw direct instruction. I also saw a teacher who was responsive to student questions, even student questions on an individual level. Again, this was more so than what seemed with the veteran teachers who tend to talk to a group rather than to an individual. So, and teachers offering direct assistance, though noting that there are online resources. So within it, I could see the germs of all the things that the parents and kids would complain about. You know, that they're sitting, they're in their groups, they do need to kind of look with the group first. But the thing I want to ask you is, in that brief rendition, does it give you, you think, a picture of the class? What would give it a better picture? How could we improve it? Me and Abigail. Joe.
I like it. I think it gives a pretty good picture. One thing I was kind of wondering, and you kind of captured it, but as I was watching this, and this isn't really my idea, when I was student teaching years and years and years ago, I know that the person who came in and would observe had this tool where he would record the amount of time, like classroom maintenance, the amount of time on direct instruction, the amount of time on kind of individual instruction with different letters and things like that. And as I'm looking, I mean, you kind of see that, but maybe the teacher, instead of just being one dot, you could have it like 3 different colors or something like that, where you put down you know, a certain colored dot if the teacher's in direct instruction, and then you can type what they are saying. But just in case you can't capture it all, you know that they're doing direct instruction, and then you put down a different dot where they are when they're engaged in kind of either one student or a small group. And then when they were passing out tests, you could put down a 3rd dot. And even if you don't track the whole place where they're going, you know,
you'd have some
indication. And not only that,
some visual indicator
right, and
of what the kind of activity was.
You would know that the teacher is engaged in classroom maintenance from this time to this time, even if you don't have dots for every one. You know what I mean? So each time they change function, you definitely have to remember to put down a different colored dot.
But they're doing, and that's part of the complexity, I think, of the there are a lot of judgment calls. For example, here, there's a lot of motion, probably instigated by passing back papers. But then interaction starts, teaching starts happening here. So the act of passing back papers also is leading to questions and response.
You change the dot.
Yeah.
When that happens, so you have a dot, he's passing out papers, but then you notice that that teacher is engaging in some direct instruction with those students. So quickly you change the dot.
Yeah.
At that spot, you change the time that you know what I mean? So you do capture that.
Yeah. So actually I would probably, at this point, maybe make the 3 to 4 right here. And this is a new color and a new note. Yeah, so 3 is passing back papers and 4 is question and response. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Yeah, Anu.
I have a child in a Champaign middle school, and I'm familiar with the concerns that you noted from the parents' side.
Yeah.
I've had those concerns myself, not every single one of them.
Yeah.
And it's not clear to me exactly what instructions were given to the students when they're working in groups. I can see the movement of the teachers through the classroom, but from my experience as a parent of one of these children, it was not clear what exactly the kids were supposed to be working on and what exactly they were supposed to be doing in the group at times. And I had to work with my child a lot on that. So this is useful as far as tracking the teacher's movements and response to particular students, but I'm not quite sure
But it doesn't
what the students are gaining from being in this classroom, what they're learning.
So the content itself wasn't clear to you what content was being covered?
Yeah, but what's that? The quality of instruction, and how
Could I
the
ask a
students learn.
related question?
Sure. I have to process it a little.
What are you trying to achieve with this tool?
With the school?
With the tool.
Oh, with the tool? What I'm trying to do is see if we can find a way to observe class, to do it reliably so multiple people can take observations and gather data in a way that could reconstruct the events so that the different constituents could be informed, including parents, including teachers who want to improve their practice, and including outside observers who have agendas for looking at what effective pedagogy is or is not, to be able to share without doing a videotape. To kind of to get as much information as possible, but sort of maintain a structured look at it. And that information includes the geography of the classroom.
So one of the things that, I'm intrigued by this.
Okay.
It seems very teacher-centric right now.
The instruction?
Most of
or
the comments
the
were
tool.
about the teacher.
Yeah.
There were a few about your observations about individual students, but there were certain groups that I never saw any interaction with.
Absolutely.
And so my question is, does that mean that there weren't any, or it just wasn't recorded?
Wasn't recorded. Because the limitations on me as a single observer and of my proximity. Yeah, no, and I
If you were to hand this over to a third party who didn't do your observations, didn't hear your explanations, they might actually get an impression of what went on.
Yeah.
That wouldn't actually reflect the actual practices.
It's quite possible. Well, it's certainly it'll be inadequate. I think any.
I'm always afraid that people will take partial data and extrapolate it into areas that don't support.
Yeah, well, I think are doomed there. That's just going to happen. That people will do more than this can support.
So the idea of
but
not having a videotape.
What's that?
The idea of not having a videotape. Are there concerns for privacy concerns, or there's too much going on in the videotape, you're trying to distill it down?
I think there's a lot going on in the videotape. And I think that videotape requires so much in the way of permission and I think you could, I would make the case from a lot of the video that I've seen is that it doesn't give a complete picture either. Because a camera is going to be on a particular person. I mean, and that way, going down that direction leads to, okay, multiple cameras, multiple angles, microphones. I mean, you can get very elaborate. What I'm hoping for, and actually having an e-toy conveys the simplicity of it, is something that's kind of basic, but can be thorough enough to give an impression. I don't think we can ever get past the place where you would say to a parent or anybody who's interested in seeing what's going on, go visit the class, go see for yourself. What I didn't have on the parent night while they were raising concerns was this data. I hadn't gone and seen for myself. Maybe this would not be, because it doesn't address the concern that Anu just mentioned. There's a weakness right there, and it may not be possible in the tool. I cannot address what the students were told ahead of time with regard to their responsibilities and how the group dynamics were set up. For one thing, I arrived before the class started, but more likely that those instructions were given earlier in the year, and they may be changing over time, and that's sort of a day-to-day, week-to-week dynamic. I'm not going to capture that with this or with the videotape on a particular day, had I had it rather than this.
Well, another big thing about the videotape, I mean, we went through that class in a lot less time than it would have taken to watch the videotape. And so, you know, while you're doing it, you know, you distilled out some of the essential elements that we would want to see watching the videotape. You know, you can do a lot more, you can analyze a lot more data rather than sitting there and watching, you know, a videotape for you know, this was what, a 30-something minute class or a 40-minute class?
Yeah, this was, we came in late, so you're seeing about 30 minutes of our observation. And another thing we could do, which we need to do, because there were two of us there, we need to check the reliability. Martha was with me, and she may have seen a totally different class.
I think I have blue dots at all the tables.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well,
Yes, Michael.
just really quickly, if you could have two people, maybe one person could track teacher and the other person could try to track students
Sure.
as well as they could. I mean,
Yeah.
that way each person
Yes.
is focused on a different, so you'd have two results for the class. But
What about the invisible gorilla?
Yeah, there you go. I mean, then there's probably going to be stuff like that, that any observer is, that's very powerful, that any observer is not going to notice until someone says, oh, it's there. You know, did you notice, you know what he's referring to, right? The YouTube video with everybody counting the basketballs, and so you don't see the gorilla that's moving through. I'm perfectly willing to say that those things are there, that me and Martha would have missed because we were attending to something else.
We're both in the same corner, so we could.
Yeah, Martha even got up and moved for a later class that we were observing. I don't know what, I mean, we need somebody to point out that there might be a gorilla there so that we'd look for it. I guess that's the only response I think of.
And I'm not being critical. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it serves a really useful function to have some kind of distillation, as long as there was also some kind of context provided.
I'm not sure.
If you hand this over to a third party, they would lack the context, or they would also possibly read more into it, or either positively or negatively.
Okay.
It's that distillation, you're only capturing essentially snapshots of specific instances of things.
Yes.
It'd be really easy for me to be very critical of that teacher based upon the information I saw, and someone else could actually say, oh yes, I see they're being very effective, just because I'm only getting a piece of what was going on. Again, I'm in a business where people
Sure.
take small amounts of information and extrapolate it into areas where it's not
Yeah. We shouldn't do that.
Well,
On the other hand,
That's why
I would hate to
spoke.
think that the response to that is then, well, let's, you know, the classroom is a private place. That, I mean, well, that we don't. I felt a pressure to go in and see, and a pressure to report, and I want to report something that is at the same time, as efficient as I can, get as much as I can. That will always be inadequate, but to me, if I have, you know, if I have visuals to indicate the events, the people, and text that provides it, I feel like I'm able to get a better picture. But I hear what you're saying. I don't know how to get around that danger. Yeah.
And again, I'm intrigued by the idea. I think it actually could serve a very useful purpose. But that's why I asked about its purpose.
Yeah.
Is this going to be shared with the teacher in a discussion about
Hope so.
how they can become more effective?
Hope so.
Is this going to be shown to a school administrator? Is it going to become part of some?
It's got to make it. It's got to make its way.
Salary is going to ultimately hinge upon.
That only. I mean, that would be if it was used in an official context.
But you all, George, you know the danger, right? Things that are meant to like do
one
measurements
thing. Yeah.
suddenly become standards, and we've seen it happen. Yes. So as long as it's in your hands, I'm very comfortable.
Thank you. I appreciate your endorsement. But
given what you went in to observe, you had a very specific question about specific issues that parents raised. Given that, and that was really the purpose, it did serve that purpose. It showed a teacher who was being responsive to students. It showed some didactic instruction happening. So from that perspective, when you have this very targeted question of is instruction happening that's, you know,
right,
yeah. Then it worked. I'm wondering whether the content piece is an important piece, and so is there a way somehow, you know, I'm going back and forth, but the student teaching observation is intriguing, right? So as you go in and you observe a new teacher, you've got a lesson plan in place, you can take your notes. Is there a way to have some supplemental information added to this? So what is the purpose of instruction? What was happening before this instruction? What's going to happen next? Or even some, you know, pictures of what's happening. I mean, not of student faces, but even student product that you can embed within this, so that you see a fuller picture. Because as one observer, I mean, we've been there, and you can't capture it all, and you're listening to what the teacher's doing, but then all of a sudden, wow, isn't this cool what this conversation between the students is happening over here? So that's the first thing. And the second, and this is just not knowing the tool, if a student moves from one table to the other, can you drag them and they still have the same number?
Yep.
So H whatever becomes that same number even when they're in table.
But it doesn't capture that,
Doesn't.
So they've now just moved, and then
I would move, and I'd have to make a note on my table saying,
right.
hey, you know, H3 is now F5. You know.
No, the table is the same number.
Well, if she moves to a different table,
The number
yeah.
if I remember correctly,
Or
the number
H3,
has nothing
the number.
to do with the table.
Yeah.
With the table.
The table, right? I'm sorry.
So
H3 will be
you
F.
put it later on this table.
Well, and
When
I
you
saw you
recorded, you say
referencing
it
them
was
by
K
table number
Right.
and
15,
table.
15 has nothing.
I wondered
15
why
is
you were putting the
15
table
is a
letter
student
in.
number.
But that actually addressed it, because all you need is the student number,
Right.
really.
Because
But you were prefacing it with the table
Right.
letter.
That was the part that
And so
I,
that,
Yeah.
so like,
So if
student
student 3
the next
moves,
move could be
she'll be-
H13.
I understand.
So that
Yeah.
you sort of get a sense of where they were
yeah.
when that happened.
sometimes.
And you can
yeah.
have multiple teachers in there, so if there's teacher
Yeah.
1,
Yeah.
teacher 2, so.
Yeah.
As many as you wish.
But we can only pay attention as an observer. You can only pay attention, write notes on one at a time, and so you're constrained to this sort of linear focus, which is bound to be, you know, just a small segment. But on the other hand, I do like it because it does. If you go into a classroom with a particular question, like. Now I want to go in with a question about students, and I'm not sure how to get at that one. You know, what do students know? When I visited classes in Charleston that were doing CPM, and they've been doing it for a decade. I'm sorry, St. Charles. Yeah, they totally comfortable with the group work, but I asked them, have you heard the term resource manager, facilitator? These are the roles that the students are supposed to play. And they said, no, they didn't. It was one of the things that had gone by the wayside, that early, well, the naming of the roles. On the other hand, the responsibilities that go with those are things that even when we observe, students seem to fall right into. One person from the group would get up to go get the graph paper. And they couldn't say that they were the resource manager, but I'm the, you know, something. So we could, there's no reason that we couldn't talk to students and find out those, get more data on those things. I'm not sure how useful this tool would be. I think my goal is to capture as best we can something that is under the control of an adult. And so it's by construction teacher-centric. And we didn't see much motion of kids from one to another, from one group to another. But I think in traditional classrooms, there's no, kids are in rows and they don't get up at all. So.
Could you potentially move from table to table, like just still following the teacher, but as the observer, because you're just doing this on a laptop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So move closer to that table to capture the conversation that happens with the teacher, so you can hear the student.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To follow
So you're
around.
still kind of following the teacher, but you're capturing more of the student questions as well.
And when Jana's gone, but she and I have done lesson study observations around the state, and they give you a clipboard and you go around and take notes at different times. You kind of do this sort of thing, but you're hovering over. In fact, you'll see when they orchestrate it, they'll have groups of like 50 adults kind of huddling around. These poor kids they're really troopers though, paying attention to what the kids are doing. And there is an app called Lesson Note that will allow you to do some similar things. You could drag out a table and a student, and then you write with a stylus. I prefer the keypad, but yeah, we could move around. I do think that after a short period of time, if we are noticed and disrupting the class, kids kind of ignore us. I felt like they tuned us out pretty quickly. If we were walking around, I think that they would attend to us probably more. So I think we would be more disruptive. Also, I believe that when I am paying attention, and I think that most adults, or observers, when they're paying attention to the interactions, are able to get the character of the interaction, if not the specifics. That is, I could see a student asking a question. I couldn't hear it, but I could hear the answer. And so I know that it's I can infer that it's a constructive interaction and that it's on task based on what the teacher is saying that I can hear. I remember observing one class in which the teacher was getting down and he was on his knees and he was talking to a student who had his head down like this. And it was toward the end of the class. And I was way in the back. And I thought, even if I was right next to them, where I would be clearly disrupting what was happening, I wouldn't learn more than I knew from far away, because it was clear he was asking a student who was disengaged about being disengaged and what was going on there. So the character of it, to me, was capturable even from a distance. And I feel as though observing it, I can do that. Does that seem right to you? You did move to get a different vantage.
Yeah, partially, and also because my battery was.
To find an outlet. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you could hear what the teacher was saying pretty much from everywhere, because I was still on the same side of the classroom as George. I just had, but I was in one corner and he was in the other. But yeah, so I mean, I didn't know anything about that little top third table in the back, but you could see the teacher over there and you could see what they were saying and talking, and usually they would project the responses so that everybody could hear them.
Think it'll be potentially useful to the teachers?
I think it will, because it's no different than, like you said, the lesson note. I mean, I've done the same thing just on paper, and they've done the circulation of the teacher around the classroom. And it's always an aha for them to actually look at that map afterwards and realize, oh wow, I never was over here with this group, and I was over here with this group far more than what I needed. And just that data, putting that data on the table for them to look at without any, just here's your data, and then having a conversation, it has benefited everyone that I've done it with.
Yeah.
Because then, and then the other thing that they're finding, this addresses your question about the pacing in the class time, is right now the middle schools have gone from either 60 or 80 minutes of math to 47. And just that alone is causing such a struggle and angst with my colleagues, because you take out 12 minutes of anything, it just has thrown them for a loop. Because that's not even state average anymore. We are not at state average in Champaign in middle school. State average is like 52, 54 minutes, and we're under that now. And that's just killing any of the closure that sometimes happens with the lesson. And with it being the second year of the adoption, they're still getting used to a new course, for lack of a better word. And as you know, anytime you do something for the first time, you're always, after you do it, like, wow, that took me longer, or wow, that kids got that one really quick. So understanding your pacing for the week is still a challenging one. But that 47 minutes is killing them.
You know, you can even tell in this lesson that the teacher was about to engage on something, and it was done.
It's the
Ran out.
amount of time, especially for middle school, is just, they go from an hour in elementary and 55 at the high school, and where do you need to have more? 47 in the middle school.
Picking up on one thing you said, I would make the case that just this picture provides some useful information to the teacher and to anyone else who might be interested in the class, indicating the amount of motion that's taking place. You know, that these students here did get a chance, a couple chances, to be in the proximity of the teacher, and that was true, it seemed, for all the groups during the half hour that we were there. So we have documentation of that physical presence of a teacher, as well as being responsive. How students are perceiving it, that's a tricky one to get at. I'm getting close to 1 o'clock, and I did want to say on this, since this is the inaugural one, next week George Zapara from the Water Survey is coming to talk with us, and that should be really very cool. And so we're setting up the schedule, and if some of you would like to share your work with us at a Friday lunch, I'm going to try to rope Maya into doing one. And, we should get more of that. We had Barbara come over last year, but we should have the Neuron staff do a talk this year. John and I? Okay. So, yeah, if you'd give us a talk, that would be good. Okay. Anyone else up to volunteering? Okay. No, Anu? The future of calculus and mathematics, or the future of net math. I'll let you know as soon as you figure it out. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Okay.